Kyra's going to have a bad time. We'll see what Hydration does. Unbelievable! What is this? I'm losing my mind! I can't take it anymore! Please stop!
This week in the Overwatch League, Boston goes undefeated for a 10th game in a row and looks set to break the NYXL's record. Rumours swirl that the Dallas Fuel's recently fired head coach Kai might be joining their Texas rivals, the Houston Outlaws, and the race for the stage playoffs heats up. We've got all the latest news and the best highlights from the past week.
Onto agility, so you know how devastating the hack is now. This Fisher's like,
get him, son!
The map, and
oh no, he's gone! He's got another jump. He gets knocked back, barraged in. This is a bit ballsy. Fisher takes him down. Nobody doesn't like Fisher.
The story of not just this week, but the whole of Stage 3 has to be the incredible rise of Boston. They remain undefeated this stage after 6 games, and actually picked up 4 straight wins at the end of Stage 2, putting them on a 10-game winning streak. The record win streak right now is held by New York at 11 victories, and it was actually Boston that ended that run a couple of weeks ago.
They will defeat the New York Excelsior.
What a statement from the Boston Uprising after everything they've endured this past week.
The Uprising face Shanghai and Dallas next week, so unless there is a dramatic upset, they will soon be setting a new record. Considering everything that happened with Dreamcast for this stage, this is an amazing achievement. On this run, they have toppled all 3 of the All-Korean rosters, and now the only 2 teams that really pose a threat this stage are the Valiant and the Gladiators, both teams that Boston beat in Stage 2. Of their 10-game winning streak, 6 of those matches have gone to a Game 5, which is really interesting, as it's not just the big teams like New York and Philadelphia who are also making them work hard for the win, but Mayhem and the Shock also took it all the way. This shows a lot of mental strength for this team, which bodes well for them if they reach the playoffs. Being able to consistently pull out victories while under pressure is a huge strength, and something that even great teams can often struggle with. However, because of all these Game 5s, their map differential isn't that big, so they'll be aiming for dominant victories over Dallas and Shanghai next week. Another interesting story that right now is little more than a rumour is that the Dallas Fuel's recently fired head coach Kai might be moving to a position within the Houston Outlaws. It was first reported by Slasher on Twitter that his sources had said the 2 parties were in talks for Kai to take up an assistant coach role for the Outlaws. Kai previously coached the 2017 USA World Cup team, which he hand-selected and included Jake, Coolmat, Raucus and Fact Fiction, all now players for the Outlaws. It's a move that really makes a lot of sense. The Outlaws head coach is the very well respected Tyrong, and working under him as an assistant coach would be a great position for Kai, bringing with him his previous experience with many of the players on the team, and as I've said many times in the past, the more robust a team's coaching staff is, the better, and this would bring Houston up to 4 coaches plus their general manager. Also, after all of the pressure and drama of the Dallas Fuel, you've got to imagine this would appeal to Kai. An assistant coach position would let him hone his craft with players who he already knows well, and in a team with much better resources than Dallas had access to. I hope it's true, as it feels like this is a win for everyone involved. Also, before we get into the rest of the news, Taimu of the Dallas Fuel was admitted to hospital this weekend after experiencing a numbing down the left side of his body. Following some tests, all seems to be okay, and doctors believe it was the result of extreme stress or a migraine, so go and send him some get well soon wishes on Twitter if you have the chance. On to the team news, and things did not go that well this week for the Philadelphia Fusion. They've been on a tear since the end of Stage 2, but just like in the previous final, they once again lost to the New York Excel in a reverse sweep.
Has to back away, but he's going to charge back. What? Welcome to Fraggy Town.
This was pretty heartbreaking for the Fusion, but was made worse the following day as they had to go right into a match with the Shock, which they lost 3-1.
Throwing himself out there. He's got to be feeling confident in this duel, and certainly when you're hitting shots like that, Boombox gets collapsed on by Super as well, and now Architect with no threat to him, he gets to take pot shots at Neptuno all day long. Neptuno not going to be happy about that, considering he had just thrown his Valk in there, but Architect just taking control.
Playing the last game on one day and the first on the next is almost impossible to be fully prepared for, but the Fusion aren't the first team to have this happen to them. There is certainly an argument for a scheduling change for Season 2 to give the teams more time to prep between games. The LA Valiant started off this week strong by winning the battle for LA against the Gladiators, but they later fell to the London Spitfire.
Shot. Fortunately for him, he's still got to go. Wow, Urang out in the middle of nowhere. Soon!
However, this was their first loss of the stage, and they don't have to play New York at all this stage, which really improves their odds of making the playoffs. The road is still tough, as they will probably have to beat the Outlaws and Philadelphia to hold onto a spot, but if they do win those games, they could most likely afford to drop their match against Boston. Speaking of Boston, they beat London and Seoul this week, making them the first team to beat all three of the All-Korean teams in a single stage.
And you can just see how much it means to him. He couldn't believe it when he got up. You saw the look of shock on Note's face. 4 deaths for Striker over the course of that map.
I spoke earlier about how impressive their run has been, and it truly is. Next week they have what should be a couple of easy games, but they really need to close these matches out with strong wins to increase their map score. If they can do that, they should definitely make the playoffs.
They have a lot of time here.
They've got to be flawless. A little bit weird that Mistakes popped that info site there. Maybe looking for a pick to open it up, and maybe just looking for where the aggression is coming from. They know where he is.
They just realized that he was hiding behind the pillar the whole time.
The New York Excel pulled off 2 reverse sweeps this week, which tells you a lot about how close most of the teams in the league are right now. New York are almost certainly going to go into the end of season playoffs as the #1 seed. They still sit 5 wins ahead of Boston, who are in 2nd place. But when the playoffs come around, it's anyone's guess who will win with how close these teams are looking right now.
And then like it puts the supports in a weird spot. Oh, shot from the point that it's just absolutely filthy as the bubble saves Big Goose there as he's going won't save Shirtwar for long. No!
The San Francisco Shock upset the odds this week with their win over the Fusion and also picked up a 4-0 victory over the Dallas Fuel.
Like turn around to get that hook when Dante wasn't expecting, but he was ready.
That's an early grab. The concert. Oh, and the pulse bomb goes in. It's the Big Bang.
Another piece of the puzzle seemed to click into place this week as their newly signed DPS star Architect came into his own with a great performance. With these 2 wins under their belt, they're now in the race for the stage playoffs, but with some tough matches next week, we'll have to see how well this still developing roster does against London and New York. The LA Gladiators fell against the Valiant this week in the 3rd battle for LA, giving the Valiant the 2-1 lead overall. They also suffered a reverse sweep at the hands of New York. However, even with 2 losses, they did not look bad doing it, and the Gladiators are still a playoff level team, but they do have a few tough games to get through, and the race for the 4th playoff spot will be tight.
And now, obviously, your ultimate doesn't get refunded if you're interrupted halfway through. I love that change. Yeah, it's good, especially as much as I dislike going up against Genji mains. Anyway, here's the big shadow! Unbelievable! Fisher breaks the house down!
Seoul had a mixed week with a win over the bottom team in the stage standings and a loss to the top team. But that's not the end of the bad news for this team. Their next 4 games are against the Fusion, New York, London and Outlaws. All of them tough matches which will make their chances of making the playoffs pretty slim compared to other teams with easier schedules.
Another filthy hook from Fleta, who is nearly topping his team in eliminations, but Zumba, just stepping in on that D.Va. The aggressive D.Va play from Seoul has been refreshing. Oh, what is this?
Now they're just showing off.
After a rough start to the stage, Houston have now put most of their hardest games behind them, and they picked up 2 wins this week. They're sitting in 8th place in the stage standings, but are only 3 map wins behind the Gladiators in 5th place, meaning their playoff hopes are still very much alive.
Yeah, how to win a defense 101 by Professor Jake right there. You kill both supports. We're going to see the replay right now. Just gets the headshot clip onto Harry Hook, and then there's no one to heal the Zenyatta. That's a free kill right there. Does it all while holding on to the pulse bomb. Like I said, he's gotten better at Tracer.
It's just insane how good this team is on Junkertown right now, and it's giving them a real edge whenever it's in the map pool. However, unfortunately for them, of their next 4 games, they only play Junkertown once, so they really need to sort out their Route 66 strategies in the coming week. London started to look better this week, but were reverse swept by the Uprising, and nearly had the same thing happen again against the Valiant, but managed to pull it back.
Different phrases here.
What is this?
We'll see it from his perspective.
Oh my god.
Throwing shades, man.
Oh my god!
That is filthy stuff.
We found out this week that Birdring has been suffering with a wrist injury for a while now, which would explain a lot of his underperformances during this stage. So we saw Hurek step in for him, and while he's still great, he was also often outclassed by other DPS, and doesn't offer the same hero pool as Birdring did, which provided them with so many DPS options between him and Prophet. Let's hope for London's sake that he gets well soon. On to the Dallas Fuel and their first week without Coach Kai Kai. Unfortunately, they picked up 2 more losses, and although the team owner tweeted out that spirits were high within the team, that doesn't really line up with what the players themselves were tweeting. Effect in particular seems to be really struggling, and I can't help but feel sorry for him. He grinds and works so hard, and is pretty much always the best player on the team, but unfortunately you just can't carry in the league, and he's unable to get the wins that he really deserves.
I don't know, I mean, it's tough to really make this call to full-on commit to it, but I think you try to press your advantage. Nice pulse bomb, disrespect. A Tracer v Tracer pulse bomb is a rarity.
Florida dropped their game against the Outlaws, but picked up a win over Shanghai. Unfortunately, there isn't really a lot to say about this team right now. Both of these results were to be expected. If they had had Route 66 rather than Junkertown against the Outlaws, there was a chance this might have gone to a Game 5. But Houston are so good on Junkertown that as soon as Mayhem lost on Ilios, the game was pretty much over.
Shanghai moving in slowly. Side player on the back. Awesome guy down though. A little bit on his own. Side player tosses out. Oh, he blew himself up. Whoopsie.
The Shanghai Dragons had their only remaining hope of getting a win this stage squashed as they lost to the Mayhem. They don't really have another good chance of a win until they play Dallas at the start of stage 4. There was a lot of hope that this team would begin to improve with all their new additions coming in, and while some of their mechanics in each role have certainly stepped up, other issues continue to plague them. For example, the attack part of their traditional dive is now looking pretty good, but the peel for their supports is severely lacking. Then, if they're forced to play something else, like a Widowmaker for example, they're nearly always outclassed.
Great tank play. Really here now, they know everybody has to commit to the payload itself. That means that they have an easy pickings with Gregory sending that self-destruct out.
Yeah, really nice angle on that self-destruct from Gregory. And
looking at the stage standings, Boston getting a place in the playoffs looks pretty likely. Valiant can certainly hang on in there, but they have a tough schedule ahead that will really test how good this team really are. New York's challenges are a little bit lighter with Dallas and Shanghai in week 5, and they will probably climb into second place by the end of that week. The 4th spot is really up for grabs between many of the teams. London and those below them are pretty much without a hope now, and will just be playing for the overall standings position. Speaking of the overall standings, London have now been dropped out of that second place spot as the Boston Uprising climb up and over them. Valiant also moved up and over the Fusion this week thanks to their better map differential. Looking at next week's games, we have the Valiant and Houston on day 1 in what should be a good game, and Dallas versus Florida will probably decide which of those teams is going to finish the stage in 10th place. Day 2 has London versus the Gladiators. A win here for the Gladiators will help their playoff run, but London really need to stop dropping matches or they will begin to fall even further down the overall standings, so expect them to fight very hard. Seoul versus the Fusion is also a must-win game for either team to make the stage playoffs. A loss here for Seoul would also result in their worst stage so far. On day 3, the Gladiators versus Houston is another really important game for both teams in the playoff race. Then the week wraps up with the Shock looking to upset London and an all-Korean battle as Seoul take on New York. Which matches are you most excited about next week? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, this is James Fakert saying thanks for watching and enjoy the game.